7 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before we begin our moment of silence, I'd just like you to, if everyone could keep the Creedon family. Unfortunately, we lost Jerry Creedon. She's a former state rep from Brockton and Easton. Those who are familiar in the Spellman community knew what the Creedon family meant to Cardinal Spellman. Also, in 242 years of the Mass legislature's existence, she and her husband, Robert, were the only two legislators to ever serve together. Jerry as a state rep and her husband as a state senator. So please keep the Creedons in your thoughts and prayers. I'd like to announce this meeting is being recorded and televised by local cable. I'll seek a motion for approval of bill and payroll warrants.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Accept the motion for to accept correspondence in the read file.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Public forum. If anyone would like to speak?
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Juliana Dunn. I'm from the Cultural Council. I wanted to just talk for a couple of minutes
Okay.
about the Cultural Council and kind of
All right.
what we do.
The chair reached out to us, and I said I would put her on a future agenda to speak about the Cultural Council. I also told her to speak to Mr. Lynham
Right, I know.
prior, and we received no email back. I did receive your email last evening. Okay, so anything that requires extensive deliberation and discussion should really be put on the agenda. And whereas the chair of your committee asked, but we have not heard back yet, I'll let you speak, but we're going to limit the discussion.
It doesn't even need to be a discussion.
Okay.
I just wanted to sort of talk about the role of Brittany can't come tonight. She has strep, actually, so she is homesick, watching from the couch. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Cultural Council and how it all works. But first of all, how many of you have art hanging in your house? How many of you have come to a summer concert at Whitman's Town Park? How many of you ever played a musical instrument? None of those?
Yeah.
How many of you have been dragged to a 4-hour dance recital? All right, well, you support the arts. The Cultural Council is here to bring some of that to Whitman, and 70% of the Americans believe that arts improve the image and identity of their community. The Cultural Council provides funding for a wide array of the Whitman population, from children in schools to the senior center, and with a small bit of funding that isn't in grants, we produce our own events. We have maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a year to make our own stuff happen. So with another Mass Cultural Council grant last year, we were able to cobble together the Whitman Day, but that was with a huge amount of town support. It would not have been possible without town resources. So the Cultural Council needs the town's assistance to make these events happen. It's kind of like the story of Stone Soup, if anybody knows that book, where some travelers come into a village, they put stones and a bunch of water in a pot, and then someone says, I have a few carrots, I have a few onions to make the soup. So that's kind of like the Cultural Council. So I just wanted to illustrate that. So here are the things we need to make our stone soup. First of all, Cultural Council does the event. We provide funding for an arts organization or a group, a band, or a program to come to the library or to the schools. That goes into the stone soup. We also have been fortunate to have police and fire also as part in supporting our events. They were at the Champagne Cake and Art details that were part because we are a town committee, we were provided those town resources. Board of Health, because we tried to have some food trucks last summer, we did have a few food trucks. DPW has been great for all the summer concerts, and also huge for Whitman Day for making trash happen and putting out barrels, that kind of thing. And lastly, you folks, because we need the support of the selectmen to make all of that happen. And at the end, what you have is community. So the Cultural Council makes those events happen because of a huge amount of volunteers and because we've been afforded resources to have the town support us as we do that work. So I really wanted to just come and say that's what the Cultural Council does on a very, very small amount of money. Like I said, we have maybe $1,000 or $2,000 a year to try and make it. We were fortunate last year to get $1,500 to make Whitman Day happen, but it is dependent on having support of all of the other town committees to make that happen, our departments.
What I would just add, my name is John Byers, is that we don't receive any funds from the town's operating budget throughout the year. There's no line item. This is simply state grant funds that we volunteers need to vote to receive those state grant funds in, and then vote again to appropriate them out to the performer, the musician, et cetera, for the concert and so forth. So we are happy to do that and provide those events. But any other funds we have are donations, and you know, if we were to get a budget and then we could maybe, you know, pay back for other services, but at this time we're hoping to have a partnership and just unity and togetherness that we can make these happen without, you know, being in essence charged for whether it be, you know, town services. This is for everyone in the community, and it's for free too. So we're not charging people to come. So we just.
And also I think that Whitman is richer for our efforts, that these events add a quality of life to this town in big ways and small, both the senior center, library, town common, all of it. And so we really need the cooperation and help of other town communities to make this happen.
Thank you.
Hold on, we're going to add to this, Frank. So last night we received an email from you, Ms. Dunn, where this board was chastised, and a previous email from you, Ms. Byers, where this board was once again chastised, especially Mr. Lynham, because you held an event and you incurred a cost. Okay, other departments, rec committee, they cover the cost of their events. So the problem with this is you've incurred a cost that now it seems like you don't want to pay, but expect another department to cover that line item. They were not asked. Like I said, yes, the police, they go out of their way to try to get officers to cover all these events. With the changes due to the post commission, we've lost our auxiliaries and our reserves. So that is coming right out of the police department budget. So there are costs associated with this. So when I returned your email, I simply asked, and you didn't respond back to mine or Mr. Lynham's email, who would you like us to, you incurred a cost, the Cultural Council ordered portable restrooms to be there for Whitman Day, correct?
It was discussed, would extra restrooms be needed on the amount of people that may be expected within the community, within the town property. So these are our residents. So we provide the event, and I would hope that town departments will pitch in. And yes, there's a cost to providing services for our community, right? Public safety.
Okay, but did you ask?
Facilities are a cost.
I specifically responded to your email and asked, what department would you like us?
Can she finish her thought without being interrupted?
Actually,
The recreation department has a budget, I will add. They have a budget, so if they're able to pay for items, if we have a cultural department with a budget and a line item, that would be one thing. This is a cultural council.
Ms. Byers, you cannot host events and just after the event incur costs and expect another department to pick up those costs. So I asked, in my email, which I've yet to receive a return email from Ms. Cavallo, and you were not kind enough to return myself or Mr. Linham's email from last night, but yet you want to sit up here and hijack this meeting. So I'm going to ask you again publicly, where would you like that bill sent? What department do you think should incur the cost of your event? What department? Should it be the DPW?
I would answer that out of free cash or to create a community fund that pays for community events. I
Mr.
think by
Chairman.
providing a line item in all of our budgets to provide services for the community. That's a service. This is a cultural event, this is a community event, it gathers. If we're not budgeting to service all of our community and all of our demographic and our people, then I think that is something that should be looked at to offer, funding. And the Cultural Council has since approved that invoice, so that has been paid. That has been
Mr.
resolved.
Linham.
I would like to just quickly address your comments. There is no reason the Cultural Council cannot seek an appropriation at town meeting for the expenses associated with conducting business. All other departments do. I have been involved peripherally and sometimes a little more than peripherally with the Cultural Council over the last 19 years. I spent 1 year hounding people because we were going to lose our grant and our ability to conduct business because we didn't have enough members in the council. If anyone knows how hard it is to do these things, believe me, I'm familiar with it. But the whole point of us working together is just that. You mentioned free cash. You can't use free cash. You have to actually hold a town meeting, and 100 people have to vote in order to spend free cash, even $1. So there are means to do this. There's no reason that your group should be orphaned out there. I don't care if it's $500 or $1,000. Figure out what minimal costs you would like assistance with,
Right.
and submit a budget for it.
Okay, and I would also just say, though, we're constrained by Mass Cultural Council saying we can't pay for certain things, so we're constrained on our end as well.
But that is, I'll get right to you, Sean. That's part of holding the event, okay? You didn't randomly get detail officers because you obviously spoke to the chief prior, right?
Right. Can we
So-
just ask that we're here for, we've resolved the 250, I'll be happy to answer. I just want-
Apparently, we didn't resolve it as of last night's 8:48 email.
No, my objection was that the money was spent without the approval of the Cultural Council. Nobody asked, the money was spent.
Mr. Lineham, do you want to clarify how warrants get paid?
Stand by. The history of that bill is, the bill was incurred in June. It was sent to the DPW. The DPW, who did not order the devices, forwarded it to the Cultural Council to be paid. At the end of July, our administrative executive came to me and said, this bill is overdue, we can't pay it. I said, what do you mean we can't pay it? Well, I don't have anything to pay it from. I asked her what it was for. She told me it was for the Cultural Council. I said, they have a gift account, pay it out of that expense and send them a copy. That's what I did. That's what I would do for any department. I'm not going to stand by and wait a month or 2 months for somebody to say, well, we'll find a way to pay for this, because it's not fair to our vendors. That's how we lose vendors. So the decision wasn't made maliciously. The decision wasn't made in a vacuum. It was the obvious solution to an issue. And what I got in return was a shotgun as opposed to a fly swatter. In your response, which went to everybody that I could think of. And that's not how we work together. I've worked together with people in every department in this town. People I've enjoyed working with, people I haven't enjoyed working with. I still work with them. You folks have never approached me. It was just attack. And I resented, no, excuse me, I'm talking now. It was attack, and I resented it. I resented your email, and I wrote to you and asked for a response. If we're gonna work together, if we're gonna make these things happen, we do it as a team. Now, the good news for you is I'm temporarily here because we're seeking a new town administrator. And hopefully you'll find something more in common with the next person. But I've never rejected your group. I've never refused to work with you folks. And the intimation is insulting to somebody who spent 25 years in service to this town. And I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Kane.
Would it be helpful to have a liaison to the Board of Selectmen? I would happily play that role to like help out with communication or some of the protocol and that kind of thing. I'd be happy to play that role if the board's okay with that.
So the other thing I'd like to address too is your battle of the bands, which was in your email. So what happened was we had voting set up downstairs. We then had a part-time employee come break that all down to get set up for your event. In fact, Ms. Cavallo never reached out, nor Ms. Byers, nor anyone ever reached out to the town. So you want to talk about partnerships, ever reached out to this board saying that event was canceled. It was seen over Facebook. So where is it? This isn't a two-way street, obviously. Mr. Kane.
I think there's obviously some people who want to play a role and make this, the council, you've got a good vibe going, and we want to help you do that, but there's obviously things that we need from our end too. So maybe with a liaison and some, kind of clean up the communication, and we can kind of get past this.
I think it's very simple. We would not let any other department do this. You don't go out and incur costs and then say somebody else figure out how to pay them. Have them. We were never discussed that you were going to need funds for this event, ever. You were here when we gave the date. At no point were we ever asked, is there a way to get funds to pay for incurred cost, ever. But it's your attitude of now you deal with it, we shouldn't need to, you're not working in partnership. Ms. Cavallo, over 2.5 weeks ago, emailed me. I said, absolutely, I'll get you on an agenda. But first go in and speak to Mr. Lynham. It could be a far easier way to deal with it. Never even an email back. No email back from you, but you took the time to chastise us last night.
I didn't respond after you emailed me late last night. I thought it'd be better to come here.
But it was a misguided email. You're saying that we were not truthful in saying that we never received notification about your event being canceled. We never did. It was over Facebook. So where is the two-way street? You want partnership. You need to be partners. And I don't know if it's an attitude of you just not liking certain members of this board. You don't want to work with us. But that's what I'm
here tonight asking for your support. We are
No.
excited.
Ms. Byers, you're hijacking the meeting because I told your chair that I would gladly get you on an agenda.
Thank you for your time.
No, thank you.
10 minutes over on our schedule.
Meeting minutes.
Okay. We'll be going into an executive session this evening. First executive session will be pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A1, to discuss the physical condition or mental health rather than the professional competence of a police department employee. We will then go into a second executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21, subsection A3, to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining or litigation if an open meeting may have detrimental effect on the bargaining or litigating position of a public body, and the chair so declares. That would be with the Whitman Firefighters Local 1769 IAFF AFL-CIO.
I will make that motion.
Second.
All right.
Yes.
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 Okay, so we're back in
Do the projection.
open session. I'll seek a motion to approve meeting minutes from the open session, September 27th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, I'm going to take the liberty, just take one thing out of order. Chris, do you want to step up? This was actually under old business, but he's running between multiple meetings this evening. And
Yep, so thank you for having me. Nice to be back again. So, did want to come back to you, gentlemen, and talk about the regional agreement committee. So, just a couple updates. So, the school committee did meet at our last meeting, and we did create the composition of the regional agreement committee. We also talked about coming back to both boards and kind of letting them know where you were, and again, kind of a little bit about where we're at. So, what we voted at the time was 6 voting members, which would include 2, a member of the Board of Selectmen, a member of the Selectmen here, so 1 select board member from each town, 1 town administrator from each town, and 1 school committee member from each town as voting members. And then for non-voting members, it was 2 finance committee members, 2 citizens at large, the superintendent, the assistant superintendent, and the business manager. So what I wanted to talk to you about tonight was just kind of get some feedback on what we did. I also just went to Hanson, so I can share some feedback from them, if that's okay, so we're kind of all maybe at the same page. And so basically talked to Hanson, same thing. The thing that they brought up, and I was glad I did this, or we did this, was in terms of the town administrator being the voting member, and again, this is their perspective, you can certainly have your own. They really didn't think that that made sense because the town administrator really does represent kind of the board of selectmen, if you will, so they suggested a non-voting member. They also have an issue with Lisa being the town administrator and being a town administrator from Hanson but living in Whitman. So their suggestion was that would make more sense as a non-voting member. They also threw out the idea of maybe having a mediator involved somewhere in that process to kind of figure some of this out. And then what was interesting is they also talked about really having 2 boards of select, 2 members from the Hanson board as well as 2 members from the Whitman board. And that was kind of the feedback they provided. However, when they actually went to vote and appoint, they really only came up with 1 member, which was Mr. Hickey. So they then came back and suggested, well, maybe it does make sense to only have 1 member as kind of that representative liaison for the board. And so that's kind of what I wanted to bring to you. The only other thing was in terms of the citizen at large, the feedback was maybe that wouldn't be necessary because these would be public meetings. It's a non-voting member. Any citizen is welcome, encouraged to attend, participate in terms of public comment. So that was their feedback. Would certainly love to get your feedback, and then we can hopefully finalize everything tomorrow night at school committee. And then the second part is timing, in terms of this is something we can start sooner rather than later. So I think that was everything.
Mr. Salvucci.
Okay, when you say, all right, you say you have 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, 1 from each town, right? And you think, I don't know if having 2 from each town, it's, I think if we have a member of the Board of Selectmen to come and go to your meeting and when you discuss it and then come back to us, and we discuss it here to say, this is what we're thinking, and then we get the rest of the board to weigh in, and that 1 representative can bring it back to your committee. So 1 would be sufficient in my eyes, right? As far as 1, you're saying 1 member of the finance committee is a non-voting member?
1 from each town, yes.
Right, why? Why non-voting?
I think so again, I'm going to paraphrase the school committee's thoughts, so
Typically
again, over your
liaisons.
thoughts, but I think the general consensus was certainly they should participate, but the elected officials from each town really should be the voting members. I think that was kind of the thought process.
Right, but they do speak for the citizen. That's their task monetarily to speak for the citizens because they're the ones that make the recommendation at town meetings in both Whitman and Hanson. You vote on their recommendation up or down. So, I mean.
So I would disagree with you, Mr. Salvucci, and say that they are a recommending body of the budget, not a policy-setting committee. Personally, if I was going to, I think 1 selectman. I think obviously TAs from both towns because they're going to provide that firsthand knowledge of affordability and history and
Yes,
things like.
very
things
good.
As
like-
voting or non?
It can be non-voting, but I think they're going to be an intricate part of the process. I think you and I have had an offline discussion of, we're trying to get this thing accomplished this time and to be able to move forward, and I think a smaller committee does
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, I think, Mr. Salvucci, what you described is exactly what we talked about at school committee, right?
Yeah.
So Mr. Scriven and myself were the two school committee members, as I mentioned, but the whole point of that is, what we would envision is we would have some sort of executive session, talk about what are we looking for, what do we want. We would represent that at the meetings, we would then take it back to the group, and so on and so forth. So
Right.
I think the way you described it is how I'm thinking of it, it's, because ultimately, right, just to go back to the process, which I think they're aware of, like, for the public's sake, right, this is something that goes to this regional agreement committee. It then goes to DESI. Then after DESI, it will come to each board of selectmen because it has to go to town meeting. It then goes to town meeting. So there's ample opportunity for public participation and transparency throughout this process because it's designed that way. So at any point, if if this group was uncomfortable, then you're not going to put it on the town meeting warrant. And if the public's uncomfortable, they're not going to vote for it on town meeting floor. So I do think I think it's important to recognize this isn't, we're going to put 4 or 6 people in a room and it's just going to be done and signed and we're going to all be stuck with it. That is not the process.
Mr. Kenny.
It's not the process, but I do slightly disagree. I think most people have been saying that they would prefer a smaller committee to kind of get this done kind of thing, but I think it's going to be more difficult than people think, and there are some issues that really are contentious. And honestly, I think if we had 2 selectmen from each board, it would help provide for the numbers that would really facilitate consensus and compromise. Because I think if one member was sent who was kind of like headstrong in a certain way, and their complement in Hanson was similar, or say on the school committee, you can see how they could get bound up, In this way, adding 1 or 2 members, it does provide for some middle ground. And I think it's the middle ground that's really going to help move this process forward. And I think there's some logistical stuff that really needs to be worked out. So it's not an easy task. And
The one piece I missed, so Mr. Hickey was appointed by the Hanson Board of Selectmen. Mr. Weeks said he was interested, but he was only available on Monday nights. I told him I could not commit to the entire group on what days, right? We're gonna have to meet and figure out what works
Yeah.
for everyone, so, but those were 2 other points that I was supposed to.
Can I?
good to see Mr. Weeks in the committee.
As far as having 2 selectmen on the board, I think as far as, even if the regional agreement committee is basically dealing with the monetary value, not this, about the buildings and things like that, right?
Dan, I think
It's the monetary,
we
the whole thing?
we did cover the monetary. I mean, the assessment issue was the
Right.
point of the last regional
Right.
agreement amendment committee. So hopefully we were focusing on everything else this
Right,
time.
well, this is where the town administrators from each town would come in, knowing, that area where maybe one selectman may not know in certain areas. Because we did go over the regional agreement a few years ago, because I was on that, and we had somebody there, and over, dates and times, because it was so old, it was 50-something years old, the regional agreement, we updated it. And then, of course, the situation, the monetary end of it came about. And so that's what I thought this board was going to be on, the monetary value, but as long as that's all covered. So we'll just, I'm not sure exactly what the committee is going to be doing, and that's when I think a town administrator, when given his report to us, would be valued.
I'm starting to lose focus here on what your initial conclusion was. You came to us, I think, with 6 voting members. That's what you.
Voting members.
6 voting members.
Feedback was the town administrator, their preference that be to give the school committee the feedback that probably wouldn't make sense as a voting member. Switch it to a non-voting member. That was their perspective.
Yeah. There's 6 voting members, basically having a selectman from each town, a school committee member from each town, town administrator from each town. That makes sense to me. They just make, I don't think you need to have two. I mean, you could have two people with exactly the same point of view.
Right.
So what does that do? And I don't, yeah, it's an agreement between two towns, basically one school department, but spread over two towns, and to have that's sort of like equal representation, and it's a smaller group. As far as the non-voting members, I think we encourage those people to show up. And that's all you need to do, is encourage them to show up.
Anyone else that's impassioned, right? Because
Right.
I think to Mr. Kane's point,
Right.
it would be helpful to have those people come to those meetings and share.
They're open meetings.
Yes, and share their
Yeah.
perspective. Because
So
I'd rather hear it then than
Yep.
in town meeting.
Right.
Work through it.
Right. I'm happy with the 6 voting members.
I think so too.
So if the school committee switched it to 4 voting members, would you be unhappy?
Who would they cut out?
Two town administrators.
Oh, the 2 town administrators?
The town administrator
need to be
can't-
voting
It's a challenge for them.
Because she lives in Whitman?
And they also view that as, again,
lack of
the
faith.
charge from the town administrator
Wow.
would come from the board of selectmen.
Yeah. I see the superintendent being an important part of it, too.
Superintendent, assistant superintendent, and
Yeah.
business manager are all there as.
They're all there as non-voting members.
Absolutely.
Because the superintendent is sort of analogous to a town administrator. He reports to you.
Correct. And he's not a voting member.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
From my perspective, the town administrator represents the interests of the Board of Selectmen. With a member of the Board of Selectmen there, I think it becomes less important for the TA to have a vote, because the decisions that are made are going to be made after they're presented
To the
to
board.
the individual boards.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as it doesn't affect the ability of the group to move and the ability of the administrators to be heard as far as their concerns are related, it wouldn't matter to me whether it was voting or non-voting.
Thank you for articulating that better than I could.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
'cause-
and you also clarified it for me, too. That way, the superintendent and town administrator basically play the same role.
Yep.
I don't
Yeah.
need to belabor the point. I just feel like, practically speaking,
You are believing. No.
well, it's an
I'm kidding.
important point, I guess, that I think we should consider. 2 of us aren't the same with our perspectives, and having 2 people, even just 2 people in executive session to work it out together and then move forward, that does, to me, feel better than one person who, the weight of this committee is, the weight of the regional agreement is significant in our community right now. It's a big deal. To put it all on one person is a lot. To spread it over 2 people who can share an executive session and bounce each other off. And I think it does facilitate more, like I said, a bit more middle ground. The wrong person goes in there with a real headstrong personality or like certain issues that they're not going to move on at all in either town, then we're kind of stuck, and it's going to be difficult.
What I'm going to add is, there is no your position, my position. It's the position of the board.
right, thank you.
So,
The
person who's a representative
so if this board votes not to move off an issue, whether you're the person or not, it's the position of the board that's taken. That's why I personally don't see a need for 2, because we're going to discuss this probably under some type of bargaining clause in an executive session, and we're going to establish our position to take back to the meetings. So I think that's where we're going to have the middle ground with the board.
No, that's helpful. I mean, I think that's helpful. So basically, the way I took it away from Hanson was, while they said 2, the way they landed was basically they would be fine with 1 if you folks were fine with 1. If you felt strongly about 2, then they'll figure out a way to get someone there. So that was my takeaway. So it's presently constructed as 1. If you feel strongly, you want to vote or however you want to do it, let me know. Great, we'll look at it.
Why don't we take a vote?
Okay.
I was just going to add something real quick. So
sorry.
on the most recent iteration of this committee, not the one that Dan served on, but the one that I served on, I did come back with a potential compromise. This board, the previous iteration before Mr. Kane was here, rejected it, and I brought that decision back to the full committee, although the school committee went a different direction and it all worked out in the end. But we did function as sending one representative that brought the view of this board. So I think I think we can make it work
With one.
with one.
Yeah, so do I. And I think I agree with Frank's logic on having the town administrators as non-voting people, because they're more analogous to the superintendent than they are to either the selectmen or the school committee. So basically a four-member committee.
I'm okay with that, if that's the direction the board wants to go in.
All right.
I
So
thought Frank thought it was a voting member.
Last time.
You think, Frank, you think the town administrator should have a voting position, no, non-voting?
I don't think it's necessary.
Right, because you,
I think it's fine if you do, I think it's fine if you don't, I think it's better if you don't,
okay,
because my opinions may matter to me and may matter on the floor, but in this room, my opinions don't matter. I'm representing the Board of
Right.
Selectmen.
so it's the board's,
It's you're setting the direction, and then I'm pursuing it.
All right, so I would entertain a motion for, how many selectmen are we going to have?
I think one.
We'll send one.
Would you like to make that motion?
Sure, I'll make a motion that we send one.
I'll second it.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
So it'll end up being a four-member
Is that
board.
what you needed?
That's fantastic.
Four-member voting board, right?
I'm encouraged. Well, ultimately, so as I explained to Mr. Hickey, ultimately the school committee is charged with the composition of this board, but again, I think what you're seeing here is we're trying to have dialogue and consensus, so we don't just say, hey, guys, this is what we came up with, take it or leave it. That's
Yeah.
obviously not the right way to go into this. So if we did have a citizen at large, because I want to revisit that at school committee tomorrow night, if we do have a citizen at large, do you think that that should be the charge of the select board? Because that was kind of the consensus of the school committee, and I'm not sure you have a strong sense one way or another.
You mean to nominate the person?
Yes,
And to be a voting member or non-voting?
not. Do you have
Oh.
a strong preference whether that would be the charge of the board of selectmen or the school committee? What I'm looking at is, again, I'm looking at time, right? So if we're gonna have a citizen at, this, I'm gonna make the same point tomorrow. If we're having a citizen at large, okay, now we need to have some sort of application, and now we need to do some sort of interview, and now we need to do some sort of selection. So that's a month that we just burned, right? And again, they can't just come to the meetings the whole time, so.
Right, well, I think anybody can be a citizen at large, right?
I'm gonna take that back perfectly. And then timing. So last question, timing, I'll get out of here. As soon as reasonably practical, any hesitation from getting this going sooner rather than later?
As a matter, my plan would be to fall back into the usual order of the agenda, and when we do get to this again, we'll vote somebody.
Fantastic. Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, and having left their meeting and your meeting, I will say I'm optimistic about, this is good momentum. Hopefully now we can just get in the actual meeting and get some stuff done. So thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
Okay. COVID-19 update, Chief Clancy.
Good evening. Just quick update. I sent an email previously, but this past week we saw 35 positive cases in the community again, out of 427 tests for an 8.2 positivity rating. For the last 4 weeks, we've been in the 30 range. We haven't seen a significant spike up or down. We'll continue to monitor this and keep you informed. Personally, the 30s, I thought we'd see a lot higher as activities move back in, but so far we've been holding steady in the 30s, like I said, for the last 4 weeks. I briefly last week had mentioned the wastewater monitoring. That is moving forward. The company is supposed to be sending the stuff to the DPW. They've delegated someone to be the tester, and we'll be sending it off, and we should be getting those reports back probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks once they get out. And I just want to reiterate one time, we have some updated COVID booster clinics coming for anybody that's interested. October 21st, November 30th, and December 15th. The times vary to meet different schedules, but they're posted on the town website and also on our Facebook pages. There's a link to sign up. If there's any problem, there's a phone number on there to contact the coordinator, and she'll be more than willing to help you sign up. And I will keep you updated as things change.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you.
Chief. All right. I'm gonna move, because I know we have some other guests out there in the crowd. Let's try to get through them. I'm assuming this is Environmental Partners Tips Program? Is that what you fellas from the DPW are here for?
Yes.
All right, then let's take that out of order so we can.
Kevin, we're posted on the web with the RFP.
What I'll do, very quick little intro while Benny gets set up.
Plug it in right here if you want.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing us some time tonight. As most of you know, the last few years, DPW commissioners, our Highway Superintendent Bruce Martin, and working with environmental partners, we're trying to find many alternate sources for roadway sidewalk work. We were successful in a couple grants with Complete Streets and Shared Streets. It's a project downtown and one over Essex Street. Those have been good projects. Tonight, Jim Fitzgerald and Benny Hung, Environmental Partners, are going to give us some information on the MassDOT TIPS program and a potential project on South Ave. The TIPS program funds larger scale roadway projects. These projects would be paid for and managed by MassDOT. The town would have to pay for the cost of design. That would be the only cost incurred by the town. What we'd like to do tonight is allow environmental partners to give the board some general information about the program, some information about potential project, and then discuss just starting the application process. This is a multi-year process, something that probably won't even, if it was to happen 4 to 5 years down the road, but just kind of start that initial process and get the application going. So this time I'll turn it over to Jim.
Thank you very much. Again, my name is Jim Fitzgerald. I'm the Director of Transportation at Environmental Partners. And so we're here tonight, again, to talk about the South Ave Corridor and the potential for it to become a TIP project. So the portion of South Ave that we had initially identified is from Commercial Street on the west to Plymouth Street on the east. It's a distance of about 1 mile. And along that corridor, the western portion is primarily commercial, and the eastern portion is primarily aligned with residential dwellings. Of course, there are a number of residential neighborhoods that surround the corridor. So we took a look at the corridor and identified a series of opportunities that really lends itself nicely for something like a TIP project. First off, the huge asset of having the commuter rail station right along South Ave is really an asset to the community. We also looked at connectivity to things like for bikes and pedestrians, and with Colebrook Boulevard connecting northerly to Essex and Memorial Field, it provides a nice connection for bikes and pedestrians to different amenities in town. And we also looked at the South Ave corridor as a whole and the width that it currently has, allowing for multimodal accommodations that could be better thought out, more comfortable for bikes and pedestrians, as well as safer for motorists as well in key locations. As I mentioned a moment ago, as you are all well aware, there are several residential neighborhoods that surround South Ave. And so then we looked at their proximity to things like the commuter rail station. This slide shows 2 circles. The smaller circle is a 1,000-foot radius, or maybe about 3.5 minutes worth of a walk from commuter rail station to different residential neighborhoods. The larger circle is a 2,000-foot radius, or about a 7-minute walk for pedestrians. And as you can see, there are a lot of residential neighborhoods that really could very easily walk to the commuter rail station, and certainly bike for that matter as well, if there were to be comfortable accommodations. We took the same look at the Duval Elementary School with the 3.5-minute walk circle being the small one, and the 7-minute walk circle being the large one. And again, lots of different residential areas that could easily walk or bike to the school with comfortable accommodations. When it comes to the potential for the South Ave Corridor, the other thing that we looked at was also the potential for either redevelopment or revitalizing the businesses that are currently there, kind of giving them a bit of a boost, and the opportunities with complete streets. Studies have proven that complete streets treatments have many benefits, including safety and promoting bike and pedestrian usage, but also for the economic vitality of locations. Another opportunity would be to address some safety concerns. We found through our initial review of crashes along the corridor that the portion nearest the commuter rail station and the train tracks rates within the top 5% statewide for crashes. And there are also other areas along the South Ave corridor that also experience crashes as well. Certainly the configuration of the South Franklin and Pleasant intersection being one of them. Speaking of the South Franklin Pleasant intersection, it's as you all know, it's a very odd configuration. Given the development in the area, the configuration of the roads that have morphed over the years. Instead of just being one intersection, it's really comprised of three, which can make it pretty challenging or confusing, I should say, when it comes to motorists traveling through, especially if they're not all that familiar with the location. Pretty wide open, expansive areas of pavement that can lead to confusion, as well as pretty long pedestrian crossings at the intersections themselves. Certainly, the longer the pedestrian crossing, the more time the pedestrian is exposed to vehicles. So we look at that from a safety perspective as well as from a comfort perspective, typically trying to minimize those crossings. Here we have crossings ranging from 60 feet to 100 feet, which again are pretty wide. The corridor has a number of issues with ADA compliance. Here we see a crosswalk emptying out into a roadway without any receiving wheelchair ramp. Again, not very comfortable pedestrian accommodations along the corridor just because of the amount of pavement and the configuration of the alignments. And here are more images of excessively long crossings. Just east of Brainerd, you see that the crossing distance is excessive, just striped pavement on the side of the road, leaving that pedestrian exposed to motorists longer than they really need to be exposed. And really not taking advantage of the full potential of the location with treatments like that would be related to placemaking. Not only would shorter crossing distances improve safety, it would also afford areas for amenities on the street, even greenscape as well, and reducing the amount of drainage going into the drainage systems. So what could the vision be? Well, that's really dependent on the town and where things balance out. But certainly what we would see is utilizing these existing opportunities to really try to achieve a good balance between different competing interests for this precious right-of-way space. First would certainly be looking to provide a balance between motorists, pedestrians, bicyclists, and taking full advantage of the transit accommodations that you have here. Certainly, these accommodations would improve safety as well as promoting economic vitality. As I mentioned a moment ago about complete streets treatments, making that difference. And part of it is some of the placemaking opportunities, making South Ave a more vibrant, welcoming location for people to want to go to, bike along, and less barren, more greenscape. And achieving balance. And what that balance is really would be ironed out through dialogue with the community, with town officials, as well as with Mass DOT if it were to go through the TIP process. So when we look at the right-of-way space, we're looking at, again, vehicle accommodations, having vehicles travel at the appropriate speed, having these wide open corridors. Not only do they expose pedestrians for a longer time, but they really promote faster travel by motorists. Providing safe, comfortable, inviting accommodations for bikes and peds, maintaining parking or maybe even adding parking in places where it makes sense, and just really providing a well-balanced design. We took an initial look at what South Ave might look like. This is just a cartoon rendering, so please don't read too much into it. A number of different alternatives could be established along the corridor, given the width that we're dealing with. This concept includes in-road bike accommodations with sidewalks, as opposed to the potential for a shared use path, etc. All these things would be looked at in further detail. The project, if we take a closer look at a before and after, so this is right near the commuter rail station and the train tracks, might include bump outs to narrow the roadway, provide traffic calming, shorten the pedestrian crossing distances, maintaining parking, providing street trees and perhaps brick strips or whatever the preferred treatment is, as well as benches, bike racks, etc. Just really kind of providing a more comfortable environment that promotes people to walk from their residential dwelling to the commuter rail station or bike, for that matter, and really addressing that last mile dilemma that we frequently encounter when it comes to commuter rail stations. So, as was mentioned, a good funding opportunity for a project like this would be the TIP program. So the TIP is a 5-year program of federal funds that really addresses a lot of these issues that we're looking at along South Ave, where, again, the TIP would pay for the construction as well as the construction oversight of the project. The town is responsible for paying for the design. And fortunately, it appears from what we've seen that so far there has not been a request from the town of Whitman with the TIP program, which kind of helps the cause even further, in addition to all the great merits that this project would have. And the way that the process begins is with initial information on a platform called Map It with Mass DOT, and initial information is put in, and there's a back and forth with Mass DOT on establishing funds for the project, which would also involve certainly public outreach during, throughout, and after that process, ultimately leading into advancing the project through the design process, which is traditionally 25, 75, 100%, and final submissions to Mass DOT. So that concludes my presentation. Would we like to open up to questions?
Typically, do you have an average of what a design cost would be?
On average, it really varies. So the larger the project, the lower the percentage slightly, because no matter the scale of the project, you still need to jump through the same hoops, quite frankly. So on average, it could be about 7% of construction for the 25% design is typically what engineering would run. Another 7% for the final design, which would include 75%, 100%, and final. So in total, it might equate to 14%, but that's just real very rough numbers.
If you were looking at that layout you just presented in very rough numbers, what would you think it would cost? 'Cause
That
I'm
is-
sure you gave that some thought.
That is a good question. You know, with construction prices right now being a little all over the place, it's a tough one. We did a brief look at what that might equate to. It might equate to around $10 million just by rough numbers.
Less than I thought.
Yep.
With the town basically needing to come with 14%. You said 7 and 7, or?
Yes, and we could give you a more refined number,
50 grand.
but that would just be a real rough.
Now, is this a program that you raise and appropriate the funds and then hope to get accepted into, or are you automatically accepted? Do you guys, is there an application process?
Yes, so at the beginning, the first step would be to apply for it through the online portal that Mass DOT has. And it goes in increments. It starts very small and light, and then there's involvement with Mass DOT to make sure that it passes the smell test. And based on the merits of this project, again, we would anticipate it would. It seems to check off a lot of boxes. And the fact that Whitman has not requested funds in the past also. And then as the project continues, it goes through Project Review Committee, PRC, and has a project number, and that's when the engineer design advances at that point. As far as the process is concerned, what we would suggest if this were to go through the tip would be to handle the 25% design first, and with the goal of, getting through that portion of the project before lining up funds for the final submission. And certainly the first phases of looking at the different alternatives and having dialogue with the community would help in knowing more specifically what it is that you're looking for. And that obviously would have a huge impact on the cost, the construction cost, and the engineering cost, for that matter, of the project. And so that initial lift is very helpful in getting closer towards the end goal. And Mass DOT being involved early in the process is also very important, and making sure that we're aligning with their expectations as well, because ultimately they will have a rigorous review process with the TIP. So it's important to know what it is that we're able to provide. Now, as I mentioned before, with the width along South Ave, that is encouraging in that it allows us to most likely address all of the needs of Mass DOT and providing what it is that would be kind of a good outcome for Mass DOT, as well as a good outcome for the community in providing safe accommodations for all modes of transportation.
Community preservation funds, are they eligible for this? Could you use that to pay for it?
I
Unlikely.
don't believe. I would have to verify that, but I have not seen that before being done.
If this were done as, I think if this were done as part of a housing change, if this were part of a, 40R redevelopment or the open space portions, maybe, but it would be a stretch.
You could also, if there were, let's say that there were portions of the project that were to be funded through other means. Those funds could be used towards the project as a whole, in that there could be portions of the project that would be non-participating, meaning if there were elements of the project that the town wanted to include and wanted the benefit of a large-scale project, meaning lower construction costs because the prices are lower the larger the project, typically for construction, you could do that under non-participating with local funds. How that would be broken out would have to be a logistical discussion with Mass DOT.
Well, I'd like to ask Bruce to consider sidewalks on Plymouth Street then.
I think the first in line for our main roads there.
If we were to, so this board, a couple of months ago, asked the planning board to consider a 40R overlay district in the immediate vicinity of the commuter rail. Would that affect this project at all?
I don't believe it would. I don't believe it would.
Because I don't think the zoning would change the decision of the master for that matter.
I wouldn't think so, but I just,
No,
Yeah.
I would not anticipate that.
Yeah.
But it does make it more attractive.
makes it a lot more attractive.
It does make it more attractive, right? But, you know, there's so many things going for this project, really, with even the residential neighborhoods surrounding it. It can only be a feather in the cap to have this sort of redevelopment, and it really would lend itself nicely to each other.
Yeah. And also the school would help as well too, because a lot of school kids would go to the town center.
Yes.
That matter, so that's why improving the town center, that definitely will help on that.
Yes.
As far as the train station is concerned, it would help. I'm on the joint transportation. I'm vice chair.
Yeah.
I'm also on the MPO. I'm a signatory. That being said, having the fact that there's a train station there, the MBTA is looking to bring areas where people can walk to the train station to eliminate the crowdedness of parking, because the parking there's not a lot of cars there. So what they're looking for is walkable streets, a bicycle street, be able to get there without using it. So that does help.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And to get onto the TIP program, I can speak for it, and you'll have to come down to Old Colony if we finally start doing it instead of Zoom.
I'm on the virtual calls, not in person, unfortunately, but yeah. Your point is absolutely dead on. It's that the last mile dilemma.
Right.
You've got this transit, and you've got all these neighborhoods, but to get there, you have typically the knee-jerk reaction is to drive your car, especially dealing with a corridor like South Ave as it currently appears. If it were to be transformed,
Safety for walkers, that way there'll be less congestion as far as parking is concerned.
Absolutely.
And I know the T is looking for issues, to solve issues like that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's a good project.
Yeah.
Anyone else? I mean, I grew up on that end, and it's always kind of
No man's land.
been a little blighted. When I was a kid, I met an old timer. Once told me, "You live on that side of the track."
Yeah. That's why we had the the fire station there.
So I think any development down there would be fantastic, and I think it just helps open up, the other things that we're trying to do.
Plus, isn't there's a couple of there's a building down there that somebody was looking to maybe turn that into housing?
On Pond Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that being said, it's just going to be more congested.
Right.
So I think that's a big plus, and I think that the JTC and the MPO will look at that, and Old Colony, we can probably get it on the tip. I can certainly push it.
I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like I said, obviously funding we'll have to figure out, but we just want to start the process and get the application.
Retained earnings?
What's that? Maybe.
Thank you for
Run a pipe
bringing
down
this
there.
forward.
So what are they looking from us now for tonight?
I think this was just an introductory, right?
Yeah, an introductory, and I guess it'll sound like everyone's on board, like I said,
Yeah.
we'd just like to get environmental departments going on the application, and we'll, keep the board updated as, the application approval process starts.
Because I know the tip program is pretty full.
Yeah.
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 We're really out there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this would be out, like I said,
Yes.
4 to 5 years.
Yeah, I know it.
Bucket in the ground, so.
At least we can get the initial process, so Master will approve the project, so we can get moving.
Yes.
That's what the initial process is.
If you guys voted to start, do you want to vote to start the process, or?
I mean, I guess.
Consensus?
I think you have, I think you have consensus from us, so,
Great project, thank you.
thank you.
I'm gonna start walking to the train again.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Skip the chairman's report, all right. Back to new business. Act on the application of NJ Inc., doing business as Diamond Fuel for a change in ownership in connection with the fuel storage license at 311 South Ave.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? Okay,
Basically ministerial.
Yeah,
all in favor?
aye.
Unanimous. Act to rescind the appointment of Kevin Dalton as constable in the town of Whitman effective immediately. We've made several attempts to try and contact him as far as renewal paperwork, and we have not received it yet, so we'd be acting to rescind. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, act on the request of town clerk to issue a warrant for unlicensed dogs to the animal control officer.
So moved.
Second.
Question.
Mitzi's not there.
Right. There's going to be a number of them. Exactly what she needs to explain what they're expected to get done. They're going to start making phone calls to these people? Frank, do you know?
I think it's all of the above. There needs to be enforcement action, which includes calling, and if you have multiple dogs, maybe an in-person visit.
Is this something that, we have the senior program? They could sit at the phone, either the senior center or the town hall, and
I'm
start
not sure
calling
they're
people.
prepared for the language they're going to get when they
Well,
make
hey,
the
whatever.
call.
Or we can just license our dogs, Dan.
We can just what?
Or we can just license our dogs.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be nice if they did, but you'd be surprised how many people forget about it.
All right.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a
ACO will
second.
look at that.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Next up, act on the request of Town Clerk Don Valley to sign the warrant for the November 8th, 2022 state election.
So moved.
Second.
Seeing she's not here, any discussion? Obviously, we all know what this means, and I have it for us to sign, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Act to appoint Todd DeCudo as member of the Capital Committee through June 30th, 2025, in order to fill a vacancy on that committee.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Act to appoint Francis Lynham as a member of the Capital Committee until such time a town administrator is appointed.
Let me see. I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Any discussion?
I would just add that
Really not going to be offended if you vote.
we've had to reschedule 2 meetings due to a lack of quorum, so adding these 2 members should really help us move that along.
All right. All in favor?
Aye. Sorry, Frank.
Unanimous. Okay, and that has exhausted all new business. Moving on to old business, we did take Mr. Howard out of order, but as discussed, we'll come back and we will appoint a selectman representative to the Regional Agreement Committee. I will open it up for discussion or nominations or
Volunteers?
volunteers.
I'll make a motion for Justin.
I'll second it. Sorry, Justin.
I would accept that.
All right. Do we have anyone else? No? Okay, seeing no one else, we have motion and a second to appoint Justin as the Selectman Liaison to the Regional Agreement Committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Discuss opioid settlement. Mr. Lynham.
Hey, we received a outline of what Whitman should expect to receive from the Johnson & Johnson funds. We previously received a check, which we talked about about a month ago. And this outline that I've been presented with tells us we will be getting $13,121 if we take it in a lump sum. If we take it in equal payments over 9 years, we'll get 17,000. My recommendation is to take the lump sum.
Yeah. That's a lot of interest there.
Yeah, but you gotta wait 9 years, and who knows what's gonna happen to this program
Okay, would you like a
by
vote
the
on that,
time
Frank?
we get there.
Do you need us to vote, or?
I do need approval of the board to make that determination.
So you were looking for a motion to take our opioid settlement money in a lump sum of approximately $13,000, you said?
13,121.
13 and change.
I'll pass this sheet around.
Okay, I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any discussion?
Yes, Frank, that money goes exactly where? Into the,
It goes into the general fund. And to make it even more interesting, today I got a check in the mail for $3,400 with no explanation.
well, that was mine.
And it looks like it's a different fund, so we're going to have to track it down and find out. But there's a lot of confusion out there on this whole fund program. But we know what the Johnson & Johnson numbers are. And I don't think it makes sense to carry it on the books for 9 years as a receivable.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous.
Oh, I'm sorry, Chief.
So there's a table on that side, but I'm not sure where Mr. Lyon got his numbers, but the numbers are different. Does, this, disbursement, until 2038?
Right, that may be a different fund, Tim.
That's all it's saying, for one piece.
I'll be interested to see what you have.
I guess we got one copy for each of us, I guess. I didn't take mine.
This is the actual breakdown.
I'll take the rest.
So if those numbers just.
I don't know.
Saying out to 2038. This one, I guess, is 31.
There should be 94,000.
Whitman's right here. 9187.
This could be the initial source of funds for eventually get reimbursed for the marijuana HCA.
I just want to make sure you have your numbers.
Plymouth County, Wareham,
13,000
.04,
could kickstart something.
19,000. That probably represents this number right here.
Want this back?
Thank you.
This particular fund. Well, interesting that the numbers that Chief has is from someone other than the J&J law firm that's handling the suit. So we'll have to track back on that. I'm going to ask to refrain from voting at this point.
Okay, so do we need to, did we vote?
So we need to rescind the vote?
All right, I'll make a motion to rescind my vote.
Second.
Okay. We're rescinding our motion for further clarification on the opioid settlement money. All in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay, I believe that has exhausted our agenda this evening. Anything further on your town administrator's report?
Yes, as you know, we have called for a town meeting in November. I would ask that the board call for to open the warrant tonight and to close it on October 18th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Motion is to open the warrant this evening and close it on October 18th. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous.
The other thing I'd say is that I met with Sean and Ken Lytell and Ms. Diorio today, and Ken is putting together a pretty comprehensive analysis of recent, past, present, and future for budgeting purposes, and I think it'll be an eye-opener when he finishes it. I want to thank Sean for driving that.
Ken's been doing a lot of work. We just met, this is our third time meeting, and yeah, he's really put in a lot of research and analysis, and it's super helpful for me to go to get a better understanding of the budget, more perspective, and I think the forecast will be helpful. Sure.
Okay. Seeing that's exhausted the agenda this evening, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.